Hello, I'm Elizabeth Johnston, and welcome to another edition of From the Source. Today, my guest will be the Town of North Hempstead's clerk, the Honorable Wayne Wink. Wayne has served 3 full terms as Nassau County Legislator for the 11th District. With the redistricting, he came back to the town of North Hempstead, a place where he formerly served as councilman, and was elected as town clerk. He's a very busy man and manages to support a wealth of great causes, as well as doing an excellent job. I'm happy to have as my guest today the Honorable Wayne Wink. Thank you, Wayne, for coming to.
Thank you for having me, Elizabeth. It's good to see you.
It is good to see
Yes.
you. I know that we're part of Kiwanis together,
Yeah.
so I get to see you there. But I'd like to, introduce you to the viewers. So
Okay.
if you could tell us a little bit more about your background.
Well, you talked about a lot of my recent positions, but I started off in town government a long time ago. Actually, I was an aide to the town board, so I spent 4 years doing that, and then assisted my then council person who I was working for to become a member of the first Nassau County Legislature. So I went off to the county legislature, and while I was doing that, I was attending law school. So when I got out of law school, I became deputy counsel to the Democrats on the county legislature, where I served until about 2000, when my old boss passed away from breast cancer. Barbara Johnson, right? She was a wonderful role model and mentor. So I went into private practice then in 2000. In 2001, I felt the itch to run for office, and I was given the nomination to run for the town board. I was elected in 2001 and served about 5.5 years until, as you mentioned, March of 2007, when I was given the opportunity to run in a special election for the county legislature. I served there for almost 7 years. And at the end of that, redistricting carved up my part of my district into about 4 or 5 different pieces. I considered my options and was given the opportunity to run for town clerk and was elected townwide. It was the second time I ran and served townwide in the town, because my first election to the town board was townwide. And then 2 years later, I ran in the council district, what is currently the 4th council district, which was Roslyn, Manhasset, and Great Neck. And so I had the opportunity to run again townwide, got elected, and I've been serving now for 6 years. I was reelected 2 years ago in 2017. And I love the work I get to do as the town clerk.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay.
What does the town clerk do? I mean, I know it's actually a lot bigger than people think.
It's bigger than even I knew running for the office. We recently were added to the 311 call center for the town, which is what we call one call to town hall. If you dial 311 from your home phone, you are immediately connected to an operator who can answer basic questions for you, provide basic information, take down complaints or service requests, or ultimately, if it's a detailed issue, can forward you to the correct department and to the correct people to answer your questions and help you get assistance. So when 311 reached out to us about putting us into the 311 system, we agreed, and we had to set up what they call FAQs, which are frequently asked questions. The list of topics that we had to provide FAQs for, I lost count at about 24 or 25 different categories. There's almost everything that goes on in town government at some point or another goes through or into the town clerk's office, whether it's serving as the clerk to the town board and assisting them in creating the calendars and also keeping the minutes, keeping track of the meeting. I'm the one who introduces items, calls the votes, all of that throughout the course of a town board meeting. It could be that I'm the registrar of vital statistics, which means that my office is responsible for all birth records, death records, and marriage records that exist primarily at this point from Northwell, but we'll be discussing the fact that we're actually taking over Winthrop's registrar functions, which will vastly expand what is already an extremely active office into perhaps one of the top 5 biggest offices in the entire state of New York. So we're a very, very active registrar's office. There are so many other things we do. I'm a marriage officer. I'm the records management officer for the town. I know we're going to get into a few of these things, but just suffice it to say that almost everything that town government does at some point or another is part of my responsibility.
So how big is your staff? Because you have so many different responsibilities.
Right. We're a staff of roughly 20 full and part-timers.
Okay.
And there are really 3 more or less nerve centers of the town clerk's office. There's the main area, which is not only town board, but also the licensing and permit agents, from my office. And in that, we do a number of different things, including passports, and I know we'll talk more about that. The second area I cover, as I mentioned, is the registrar function, which is birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses throughout the town. And then the third general area is our records management division. And the records management office is where we have documents that range from the permits that were issued last week all the way back to the beginning of the town of North Hempstead. Okay. In fact, I believe the oldest document we have in our possession is what they call the Dongan Patent, which is in 1686, the governor of New York, the colonial governor of New York, of course, actually declared the general boundaries for all the towns and city on Long Island. So that was kind of the beginning of the town of North Hempstead. That document is ours, even though we did not separate from the town of Hempstead until over a century later, or about a century later. Okay. So, but we have that original document. Town of Hempstead is constantly requesting that we give them that document, but we've resisted the urge. We like our sense of history that comes with it, and we're protecting that document.
Excellent.
So those are the kind of the 3 areas that we cover, and we have roughly 20 employees who do the day-to-day work to make sure that we keep up to date on everything we need to do.
So then you must have a tremendous amount of technology supporting your offices.
We do. We do. We have a number of different software programs that we use, some of which are for accounting, some of them are for records management, some we have to interact with the state of New York, so whether it's the electronic death record system, which New York State created roughly 3 years ago, which we are heavily engaged in, and in fact I've been kind of an ambassador for the EDRS system throughout the state because they rolled it out down on Long Island first. And as I mentioned, our registrar's office is very large. We are already the largest registrar on Long Island.
Why?
And even though...
I have to ask why.
Sure. Why? One word, Northwell. Northwell Hospital, the center of everything, Northwell, is here in Manhasset. Okay. And so we handle every birth and death record that they issue. Right. We also handle home births within the town. We handle, home deaths. So there's a lot of different documents we have to handle in any given year. Roughly speaking, we handle about 6,500 birth certificates a year. We handle close to 2,500 death certificates a year. And those 2 numbers together, just for the unincorporated area of the town, make us the largest registrar on Long Island. Now, if you know the various populations of Long Island, we're actually the 5th largest town by population. Mm-hmm. Hempstead is the largest by far. They're close to 800,000 people. The town of Brookhaven is second. They're about 550,000 people. Okay. Third, I believe, is Islip. Fourth is Oyster Bay. And we're the 5th. And there are 13 towns and plus 2 cities on Long Island. Right. So even though we're the 5th largest by population, thanks to Northwell, we are the largest in terms of the volume of records that we deal with in any given year. That number is going to increased significantly because at the beginning of the year, we've already started taking on the registrar function for the Village of Mineola. So we're taking in their historical records, the ones that the birth records and death records they've issued since 1906. We've started taking those in and making them part of the town's index and part of the town's record system. But in the beginning of the year, we're going to take over all the new records that Winthrop Hospital will be creating. So that will mean roughly another, I believe it's about 2,500 births a year and about 400 or 500 deaths a year. So with what we do already for the town and for about 20 other villages throughout the town, we'll also be taking on a very, very large village in Mineola. We'll be taking on their registrar function, and that will make us probably one of the top 5 largest registrars anywhere in the state of New York. And that includes counties like Monroe and Onondaga County. That includes the city of New York. And so many other areas upstate where they have major healthcare facilities. We're still going to be one of the largest in the state. So it's an economy of scale that's something that I've always pushed for in government. I believe in what we call right sizing of government. I believe that we need to figure out what level of government provides a certain service the best, give it over to that level of government, and everybody else should get out of the way. So when it comes to registrar functions, we do a really good job. We're very efficient in my office. I have a very good staff, small but very, very capable staff that can process thousands of records in any given year. We're now, with the addition of one new person, we're going to be able to take on the entire Village of Mineola's records, and we can do it more cost effectively than anyone can. And so that's what I call right sizing of government.
Right.
We can do it, and we can do it with an economy of scale. We can do it efficiently and effectively, and everybody else can hand it off and get out of the way and do what they do best. This is one of the things that I know my office does best. So I'm very excited at the prospect of being able to increase and expand the registrar functions that we already provide to the residents of our town.
Now, how did you become so efficient is my question.
Really, it's a combination of hiring good people. I mean, that's probably the key. I can do a lot of different things in the office, but I'm not the one processing every birth record that comes in from Northwell every day. We have people to do that, and the people who do that are very good at what they do. We provide them the support they need. We cross-train people so that if, for a day or a few days or a week, someone's out, we have other people who can provide that function. When I first took office, everybody had a role, and it was kind of like a series of silos. And if you dropped a piece of work down into that silo and no one was there to pick it up and do it, it waited until somebody came back to do it.
Okay.
That's not the way to provide an effective local government, especially one that's responsive to the people's needs. You need to have people who can pick up for other people when there are vacations or sick leave or things like that. The work needs to get done.
Right.
And by cross-training people, by having a primary person but also have backup people who can assist, it helps ensure that the work gets done quickly, efficiently, and effectively. And it allows us the opportunity to keep moving ahead. And as time goes on, because so many people know how to do so many different jobs, it keeps us fresh, and it gives us the opportunity to even add services, which is one of the things that I'm very proud of that we're doing throughout the town and throughout the clerk's office, by adding different services to make the experience that people have in my office that much better and that much more efficient.
So is your entire staff located at 220 Plandome?
200.
200.
Yeah, we're 200. We're in what we call Town Hall 2.
Okay.
For anyone who knows Town Hall, it's a historic building that's located across the street at 220 Plandome Road. The Town Clerk's office shares a common lobby with the Receiver of Taxes office.
Yeah.
So I suspect that perhaps outside of Tully Park, my office and the Receiver's office receive more unsolicited walk-in constituent issues than any other facility in the town of North Hempstead. Town hall included, and most of our parks. Because we have so many people coming in to pay taxes, and while they're there, they're picking up the copy of their marriage certificate, because if you need an enhanced ID from New York State, you need to have a copy of your marriage certificate in many cases. If you're in to pick up your child's birth certificate to help enroll them in school, you can also be there to help them get a passport. There's a lot of different efficiencies that we can provide, and the fact that people are always coming into our office day in and day out without warning. We don't always know people are coming. In fact, we usually know they're not coming. But once they're there, they can get a lot of things done just between the tax receiver's office and my office.
Well, that's one of the new things that I know was introduced last year, or 18 months ago, about was the introduction of being able to do your passport while you're there, because obviously you saw that there could be efficiencies in scale there.
Yep.
I know that I had gone to get a copy of my kid's birth certificate. Don't ask me where I put it.
Everybody says that because, generally speaking, people need birth certificates only for really key moments, for if they're applying for a passport, if they're enrolling their kids in school, if their kids are seeking financial aid for college. Those are some of the real, kind of iconic moments when, people start scrambling around looking for their child's birth certificate or their own birth certificate, as the case may be. And for example, getting a marriage license, you need to have a copy of your birth certificate with you. So there are moments in our lives when those documents become incredibly important, but we don't always remember where we've left it the last time we needed it. So, if you were born at Northwell Hospital, and soon if you were born at Winthrop Hospital, you'll be in the position to come to my office and just request a copy of it with proper identification. Because remember, most of these documents are public documents. Death records, however, are not. So you need to be able to prove that you're entitled to these documents, because especially since September 11th, knowing that there were false identifications used to get on the planes and things of that nature, there was a real crackdown over the last 18 years to ensure that people had proper documentation in order to obtain certain records. So it's very important that you have the proper documentation for what it is you need, and we can assist you in that to the extent that the law allows us to.
So if you were, let's say, in California, moved to California, in order to get a copy of your birth certificate, you have to be in person?
No. No, you don't. You can mail in a request. You can send us a request with your signature, with a copy of your identification, indicating your date of birth or indicating whatever necessary information we need in order to provide the birth record. Usually, for a birth certificate, we want to know, we want to see your ID, and we also want to know your date of birth so we can verify that we have it. Because, a lot of people think, well, I grew up in North Hempstead, but if they were born at Winthrop Hospital or they were born at Nassau Medical Center, we wouldn't have their records as of right now. So, and marriages are even more complicated for a lot of people because, you may have been living in the town of North Hempstead when you decided to get married, but if you and your husband happen to be working in the city at that point, exactly, you probably went to the city clerk to get it. So even though you would think, well, I was a resident of the town when I got married, usually you can get a marriage certificate, a marriage license anywhere in the state and use it anywhere in the state. So a lot of people don't necessarily don't remember where they got their license from. We can help assist in that, at least to the extent that we know whether we have it or not. But when it comes to getting documentation, getting proper records, there's a lot of documentation that we need to see. What I think a lot of people don't realize about the town clerk's office is that we're not just a function of town government. We're a fiduciary for the state and even for the federal government, particularly as it relates to passports, because of the fact that so much of the requirements for obtaining a copy of a birth certificate or a death certificate are functions of state law. So, people, initially when I took office, if people didn't like the answer I gave them about why they weren't entitled to a document, they might call the town supervisor's office and say, he wouldn't give it to me. and it took everybody a few weeks to realize, no, there are things that I can do and there are things that I can't do. And, even though I'm a town official, I have to answer to whether it's the State Department of Health or the Federal Department of State, in terms of passports. I answer to a lot of different people. So even the town supervisor understands that there are things that I need to do based upon the law that applies to me that are completely separate from town government. So it's always interesting when people think they can appeal to somebody else, and I explain to them, no. If you want to talk to somebody, you got to call Albany, you got to call Washington, or but the decisions I make are based upon their law, not based upon the town code. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you report to a higher authority.
A number of higher authorities.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So, that's pretty extensive. But, one of the things that I know about you is that you're a man of the people, and you're also involved in a lot of different organizations.
I try.
Can you speak to us?
Sure.
For two things. One is, your motivation. People do know you. They know you because you're always there. That's what I know. No matter what role you have had, because there's Wayne Week. Oh, he's running for this, but we see him all the time. He's helping out in Port Washington with, this organization, or he's here in Roslyn, or he's, on the chamber.
Well, it's always been my belief that a public official needs to be accessible, needs to be available. You shouldn't have to come to try to find me at my office on Plandome Road. You should be able to see me in the community. I kind of learned that the hard way at one point when I was on the county legislature and I couldn't get through CVS without being stopped 2 or 3 times about different issues. But really, I am very fortunate that I've been a public official now for a long time. This is actually my 18th year in office. Thank God I stopped when I was 12 years old, because otherwise I might feel old. But in those 18 years, I found that people want to be able to talk to me about issues. There are so many things that, someone will come up to me on the street and ask me a question, and I can give them the answer so that it doesn't conflate into a major issue or something. People don't necessarily understand why something is going on. And I try to explain it to them right there on the spot. And even just to give people the feeling that they can always find me, they can always talk to me. That's what's important about being involved in the community. I've been very fortunate that I'm in public office for a while, and I've always been able to come home and lay my head on the pillow at night in my own home. I'm not traveling to Albany. I'm not traveling to Washington. I have traveled the state, as a town clerk, but it's rare, because I like the idea of being able to be home to help raise my family, to help my wife out, to walk the dog, to do all the things that a person should be able to do and still be a public official. So I've always enjoyed being able to do that. And I think what really motivates me to be involved in the community, whether it's the Roslyn Chamber of Commerce or any of the chambers that I attend events for and have been involved with, or the Kiwanis Club, as you mentioned. There's been a number of organizations. The Family and Children's Association is something that I'm very proud to be on their board. It provides me a wide array of access to information, to people from all walks of life, to different cultures, to different backgrounds, to give me a better perspective on what it is I do and why I do it. To give, so that people can understand that the services we provide are there for everybody, not just for the people who know how to, who have my cell phone number and can call me and get a favor. That's not what I'm about. And while a lot of people seem to have my cell number, It's important that everybody knows that whether it's through 311 or through my office phone or even just seeing me at a local event, they can get the answers they need quickly and effectively. So that's always kind of been my MO. I like being out in the community. I like being able to interact with people, give them the answers they want, and at the same time get their feedback. Because the quickest way to lose touch with the people is to not hear. The compliments are always nice, don't get me wrong, but the complaints are even more valuable because they tell me where we should be doing better.
So, having been amongst the people, what have you introduced that was sourced from your?
One of the first things I did when I joined the county legislature. We passed a number of bills that I co-sponsored, whether it was requiring information about backup cameras be provided by auto dealers throughout the county. The one that I'm most proud of at the county legislature was the silver alert legislation. I was the chair of the Committee on Aging for the county legislature. And in 2009, after witnessing a number of incidents where people with Alzheimer's, dementia, or other cognitive disorders were either injured or killed as a result of problems, relating to their condition, I introduced something called the Silver Alert Law, which was a law that required we set up a database, a voluntary database, because obviously we're not trying to pry into people's personal lives, but we provided the opportunity for the caretakers and the loved ones of people who were suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, which at the time, 10 years ago, was over 25,000 Nassau residents.
Wow.
Were suffering from one form of cognitive disorder or another. So what we did was we set up a database that allowed them to provide basic information to our law enforcement community, to our first responders, so that, God forbid, someone went missing, we could quickly get that information out to first responders, to the media, to anyone who could help bring that person home safely. I had a very personal experience with that, thankfully not in my family, but a good friend of mine who was in his late 80s and was late stages Alzheimer's, who got a hold of his car keys, his wife's car keys, and he drove off and unfortunately died in a one-car accident. It's the type of thing that we all know people who are suffering, and we all know the people who are caring for those people. To provide them the opportunity that if, God forbid, that person goes missing, because one of the issues with Alzheimer's is that people will wander off. It's not just they get the car keys and drive off. It's they can just walk out of the back door and walk out. To provide that information to people who can help bring them home safely vastly increases the likelihood that you're going to have a happier ending than too many of what we saw.
Yeah. So, what do you have? What's in the future for Wayne Week?
I have a 14-year-old daughter, so I can tell you that the future changes from hour to hour. So, really, I mean, as I said, I've been in office a long time now. I've enjoyed every minute of it. There are good days and bad days, and I will say that, the sacrifices that I make pale in comparison to the sacrifices my family makes for me being in office, because there have been a lot of dinners that have gotten cold waiting for me to get home. Right. A lot of days where I've had to run out for a few hours here and there. Where possible, I try to involve my family, especially if there are events that are worthwhile and fun events. But there's a lot of times when I have to be out when they're home waiting, and so. I always say my future is unwritten at this point, but I do believe that public service is in my blood, and I look forward to continuing that in this position or any appropriate position that may come up in the future. My daughter is in high school, so obviously I plan to be right here throughout that process, because it is a long 4 years in high school sometimes. Yeah. Although I'm amazed we've already gone through almost fast. 3 months of it, exactly. Yeah. So
you blink, she's in college.
That's exactly right.
And then you blink even faster, and just write those checks.
I know, I know. Believe me, I'm already doing that. It seems, but at the same time, it's wonderful to be able to watch my daughter grow, and you know, my public service hopefully will continue throughout that. So.
Well, we look forward to that. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you very much for having me, Elizabeth.
Thank you for watching From the Source. Tune in next time for more in-depth interviews with members from your community.